inner truth. Divine rise, great awakening, grand rising. Blessed be to the day. May it be everything you require to create all that you desire. You know, we're doing this Gate Talk series of the Meditate and Elevate, which is perfect going into this week's podcast episode, Buzzwords. But before we get into that, let's get into this inner truth monologue real quick. As I do my usual sharing. See how we just advancing over, we advance. Everything that you do is in aspects to grow. The last couple of weeks, we've been getting into the thought process of if you keep running into the dead end, the path of error. That was one of the big things I dropped in the lecture. The path of error is full of dead ends, and the path to authenticity. Ooh, I'm feeling the vibration on that. The path to authenticity is full of stop signs, and the reason that the path of errors is full of dead ends is because it forces us to swallow that big drop of pride to invest into the change. Investing into the change, that's what Mondays are all about, is investing into the change. Think about it when you go to work on your first day, you're investing into the changes throughout the week. Everything is food. Learn to eat from everything. But in order to do this, we must become open to seeing our inner truth. Every day I pull the card. Today's card is Gate 61. 61 is in the aspects. Y'all usually see these in the head. So in your human design chart, if we do your reading, these are all aspects of the head space. The inner truth within the mind, the inner truth within the memories, the inner truth within this space. Inner truth is the awareness of the universal underlying principles. You are the universe is you. It is a reflection of you. Everything outside of you is a reflection. That's why they can't get deep into the universe, because they can't get deep into your mind. The pressure to know absolute truth, the mysteries of life, and to resolve individual will require you to resolve the individual tension to truly open into your knowing. This is the aspects of our inner truth. The appeal, the influences, the research, the interdependence, the natural brilliance in that occult knowledge. You coming into your mind based onto that aspects of the hidden aspects of yourself. For you to study the occult and to understand the occult means the hidden culture, the hidden mind, the subconscious. The first thing that you have to remember, you have to be empty to become fulfilled. That means you have to empty yourself before you can start fulfilling yourself. Actually bring yourself into that space. So that big thing in there is silencing. And what I mean by silencing the chatter of those inner conflicts. The rebuttals, the response, the reaction, the rebuttals, the impulses to naturally react to the voices and learn how to respond to the voices to better inform yourself into your growth. This is the aspects of our inner truth. This is the aspects of your inner truth to yourself. Your inner truth is not going to be the status quo. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about fuck the status quo. That's not who you are. That's never been who you are. One of the biggest things that I thought about when I was younger, and for a lot of us, that age-old script line, the age-old line that was within the script of, I'm grown. I'm doing this because I'm grown. Or I am the parent. Or I remember listening to these lines and how it embedded into my mind and thought processes to where if my mother lost her mind, my mother very rarely lost her mind. But when she lost her mind, got upset, we got mad with each other, she got mad, and it was under the thought process of I'm grown. And then when I thought about it, I remember coming into my adulthood, my 16, my 17, my 18 years, and the way that it corresponded to me was, since I am an adult, I do not have to apologize or I do not have to forgive. And when I do forgive, when I do apologize, when I do show that sensitive aspect, it's based on manipulating a situation. Because I started realizing that only time that I said I was sorry, the only time that I apologized for things, was only to say, well, I apologized, you accepted my apology, so it's done with. That's not the case. When you're coming into the aspects of your inner truth, understanding yourself, bringing yourself into that inner truth, one of the biggest things that comes in us with our inner child work, working within ourselves, I've seen so many individuals and had dialogue with so many individuals, and it's never been the information. It's always been this sense of what to do with it and how to allow it to, how to expound upon it. That was one of the biggest things that came into that space of just expounding upon it based on that vulnerability complex, allowing ourselves to become open within that complex. I had a high rage complex when I was about 12, 13. I was literally an IED. If you have not studied the aspects of the IED, that is you have a high complex for rage. That means when you get upset, you can't turn that shit off. That was me. I've talked about that before. That was me. This was only due to when I further did the inner child work, I realized that everything within your design of your now, everything within your design of now, the diseases, heart problems, liver conditions, all these aspects and these conditions that happen inside of you when you're going through that space, all of that is by design. Everything down to the disease itself is down to a design, because it's all forced to give you an aspect of an anchor. It's all forced to give you the aspects of an anchor to look at the understanding, going deeper on it beyond the emotion. So when you look at things like, oh my God, this person has cancer, this person has hypertension, this person has heart problems, heart conditions, this person has this bodily function that is wrong with them, they fucking kidneys are shot, their pancreas is bad. All of these are aspects when we go into the study of our body creates the elixirs with inside of us based on our truth. I've been watching Teen Wolf. If you haven't seen Teen Wolf, go peep it out. A lot of gems is in Teen Wolf. I realized after I watched it the first time, watching it, I'm like, there's so many gems in this. Like season 6, for example, they talking about eating pineal glands and absorbing power, all that good shit. And when you read The Delectable Negro, a lot of that stuff is in there. But that's all besides the point. Our body creates elixirs based on our truth. Our body creates the elixirs based on our knowing. So what is programmed within inside of us based on the emotional imbalances, that's what our body creates. Our body creates we'll take the 9 herb approach, the 9 herbs of the body, the main 9 herbs of the body, for us to tap into our higher aspects of ourselves. But if they're mixed the wrong way, it is venomous to the body. These are the aspects of your emotions. This is how you use your emotions. Your emotions become detrimental to the body because they break down the body. If you're always in a state where we understand when you're angry leads to liver problems. I want to say fear leads to respiratory problems, and the list goes on. So it's not just the aspect. This is what I mean about going deeper work with yourself. Understanding what trigger words, and how you define these words in your life. I made a post about MK Ultra yesterday. I'm gonna get deep into it on the podcast. I made this aspect. I made a list of common buzzwords: mom, dad, family, Black Lives Matter, the devil. Just threw out 5 randoms because that's where how you define it within your space is how it will affect everything within your body. If something was to happen right now to my mother, the things that I had to get to a point in time in this doing internal child work where I had to really look at the aspects of my mother and get to a point. It's not just getting to the point of like, okay, cool, my mom did this, this, and this. I had to get to a real point with my mother to actually see it from her point of view. I had to see it from her point of view, where she came from. I had to be able to ask about those stories about how she came up and how she grew up. My mother grew up. I think she was like number 4 of like 13 kids. 3 aunts. I had 3 uncles of 13 kids. My mother was usually in the space of shunned because she had physical disorder. She has epilepsy. So she was automatically shunned just based on this. Like, she was always told she can't go outside, and she was always looked at weird, and all of these things just by the aspects of her family. Yeah, 50. Yeah, that's right, because we got 15. But going into that space, so for me, looking at me when I'm going through my inner child work, and looking at what my mother did and what my mother implemented into based on her survival, was directly tied to how I was tied into my survival. The things that my mother did based on her survival now became aspects that created the conduit based on my survival. Just in that space, then that entire narrative shapes the truth that you knew and the truth that you're into of yourself now. The truth that you knew compared to the truth that you're in now. This is one of the hardest aspects when you're coming into that awakened state. You're coming into that high aspects of yourself, because based on that old truth, based on that trauma, this is what I'm always saying, like, the first thing you got to do with an acknowledgement is acknowledge that you benefited from the trauma. Acknowledge that you benefited from the trauma. Because your current existence is based upon those traumas. Until you acknowledge these traumas and how you benefited from them, you can't work on them. This becomes one of the biggest. This is one of the biggest aspects when we come into ourselves of you're not going to move forward in full sense of the truth of yourself, because there's still things locked within that are still creating those old elixirs. They still got your body acting a certain way. They still got you moving in a certain light. They still got you moving with that internal bias and that internal old algorithm of a clock. They got you moving based on the old impulses. Because you don't even, most of the times when you get angry, we think it's angry based upon something on the surface, but that's actually just the venting. You being angry in this main aspect of where you at right now, yeah, let's say you get upset, like right now, today you get mad. That surface act is that's not the necessary forefront. That's not why you got mad. That's only the venting. That's that vent. That's that vent that's been released that popped off based on the impulse. Your inner child is trying to let you know something, but you got to ride the impulse. Last week we got into that podcast episode. You got to ride that impulse to see why you got angry in the first place. Where does that anger come from on the internal? Where does that sadness come from? Where does this desperation come from? Where does that doubt, that lack of self-confidence come from? It's cool to reinvent yourself, but why are you reinventing yourself? Are you reinventing your entire why? When you look at the aspects of the appeal of you reinventing yourself constantly, you naturally are going to reinvent yourself because your body goes through that natural cycle. But why are you reinventing yourself? Why do you feel that you're reinventing yourself? Is it based upon the conflict, or is it based upon balance? Do you feel like you have to be in every situation? Because you can understand when you're doing stuff based on that appeal of the external, because you'll kind of feel like after a while when you start doing your internal work, you're going to be like, I should listen. You're going to start saying to yourself, I need to listen to myself like this. I need to listen to myself more. Why can't I listen to myself? What is the voice? You have to define that voice. A lot of us come into a space. I remember just for myself, a lot of the times when I was reinventing myself, putting myself in certain situations, it was because I did not define the voice that was speaking to me. That was within inside me. I didn't define that voice. So I was always coming from a state of the brokenness, but I didn't define that broken aspects of myself. So every time that I spoke strong. I spoke very confident to what I thought, but it was all based upon that broken voice. I would be overly loud, and I've never been a loud person. So if I got loud, people were like, oh, yep, he's mad. So they would know, they knew my triggers. And this is the aspect you understand that outside of your reflections, when they notice your trigger, it's your job to look in like, if they have control and they know my trigger and they know how to pull it, they have control over me. If they know what words to use to get to me, they have control over me. That means I'm not within my authentic self. This is that aspect of that self-awareness to your truth. Silencing the rebuttals and the reaction to the conflicts of those inner voices. Allowing yourself to sit within that space and look at yourself and be like, I really need to sit down to this. This takes you way past the escape of the narrative, because remember, everything outside of you becomes that reflective point, whether it's by immense amounts of anger, immense amounts of depression, sadness, sorrow. It's not matching the internal. You have to understand that what you're seeing outside of you is matching the internal. When you're unaware of it, it matches the internal. It's matching your internal. When you're seeing something in the way that you react to it, it's matching that internal aspect of yourself. There's been so many times in my life where I had to sit there inside of a space and I was like, why every time I go here, this seems to happen, but when I don't go there, I never really hear about it. I had to start monitoring my own energy within spaces that I was going in. Because if there was something that was undone with inside myself, that means I didn't deal with something. That means I didn't sit down with myself. I didn't do a self-care regimen, a self-care meditation or something to myself. There's something simple as sitting there with myself having a conversation. I noticed that my day would change. My day would change immensely. Like my day-to-day now changed immensely just by me simply invoking meditation. By building into my meditation, building and going to the gym. Because these are not influenced by the external of the natural aspect that's going to happen. I'm not going to the gym to lose weight or tone up, because that's going to be naturally what's going to happen. Why am I going to the gym? I'm going to the gym because the gym is that's my lab. Everything from the beginning mantras that I used in the beginning of my day, all the way until the end of my workout when I'm on the treadmill or I'm on the bike at the end of my workout. All of that's my alchemy. I'm programming my day my entire time. I'm programming my entire automaton before I step into any space. That way whenever I do feel anxious, when I do feel something, I'm able to acknowledge it. Because I've already programmed my day to learn and observe my day. I've already put myself out to, like, the thought process I said on Thursday. I've already said if somebody says good morning to me, this is an example of going into these words, understanding these words of attachment. If somebody says good morning to me, I'm like, what part of aspect of me do I need to kill off today? What about me do I need to kill off in this day? This is when you're going into the space because you're becoming more self-aware. You're reacting less and you're learning to respond. Response is silent because that allows you to get the information. You have to invest into that change. Investing into your changes. That's what the moon day is all about. The Monday is the day of the moon. That's the day of the change. So I'm going to ask you today, what are you going to invest in based on the changes that are happening? First you gotta be open to change to invest in the change. So how are you going to invest into your change? What buzzwords are in place based on attachment? How does the word mom make you feel? How does the word dad make you feel? How does the word sister, brother, cousin, how does the white man word make you feel? What trigger does it hit? There's an underline. Until you acknowledge it, you're only going to be empowering the underlying fracture that's already within your psyche. This week on the God Hour podcast, we are getting into buzzwords, exploring the words of attachment. Because I want you to be the best. I want you to be great. If you knew, I put it like this. I know probably everybody's seen that meme. But if the words that you were attached to showed up on your body, would it be beautiful? Or would it be a dark, twisted fantasy written all over your arms? I want you to be the best. If you are interested within the readings, setting up a shadow work consultation, natal chart analysis, human design chart analysis, or any of my others, .com, or you can inbox me. Occult Alchemy, my Shopify.com. That's the place for all the clothing and the merch support. And Lucifer Somni is, of course, the Cash App link to also show that support. This Friday, we getting into the MK Ultra Instinct. MK Ultra Instinct. That's this Friday's lecture. Just came through to pop off on that. But this week, God Hour podcast, we getting into buzzword. 6 a.m. New episode to be streaming 6 a.m. every Tuesday, because today is the only day that matters. Monday is the day that you invest into your change. So focus on investing into your changes today. That's how you start your week. That's how you start this process. Tuesday is the only day that matters, because through today, we take those investments and go forward. Wednesday is the only day, because that's the day that you're going to take those things by understanding the things within those shadows to bring that new light. That new light, that new heat, that new flame, that new spark that leads you into that Thursday. Thursday is that day of 10, the most malleable of the metals. When you now you're gonna shape yourself into what you want to be in, shaping that mold. Friday, the day of love. So you're gonna put love into that aspect and then release on Saturday, and we come back and rise on Sunday and do it all over again. Only one day matters. Only you matters. For everything outside of you is the reflection for you to either experience and or learn. I want you to learn to become the best. I want you to open up to that vulnerability within yourself and become that best. Because that's what I require for myself. But yeah, I love you. We love us. Ashe.